Hi, and welcome back to the 40-day challenge and embracing the race. Before I get to this, I just have to share because I'm so excited. Look what came yesterday. My first Run Disney race shirt, first Run Disney medal. And you know, even though it's just the 5K, this 5K was just ridiculously special. You know, I ran my attempt for time and was able to achieve that goal and even a little bit more. And I ran it again at Disney with my sister. So, I mean, this medal represents what I was shooting for, which is the best virtual I've ever ran and probably will ever run. So it's just, this will always mean something special to me, even though it was just a 5K, but super special. And the circumstances surrounding how I went about this 5K kind of goes along with today's devotion, and that I made the best out of this race turning virtual, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. But today's devotion is called, get my pen out of there, In All Conditions, and I lost my spot. In all conditions. The verse is Philippians chapter 4, verse 11 through 13. I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. So she goes on to start off talking about how, and it could be different for everybody, I would think, but that runners have their ideal conditions for running. Just the perfect temperature, perfect either cloudless sky or just the perfect amount of cloud cover for little bits of shade, and just the day that we feel this run is going to be perfect. And just those conditions that we love to run in. But how often do those actually happen? You know, most of the time we're dealing with too cold, too hot, rain, wind, and you know, anything, all of that, puddles, mud, you know, whatever. Most of the time we don't have that perfect day. She goes on to talk about, you know, we can't control that. We can't control the weather, but we can control how we respond to it, if you want to call it that. You know, we either make sure we're dressed appropriately, put on those layers if we need it, make sure we have the water that we need if it's really, really hot. She says the temps remain the same, but our attitude changes our perception. We, you know, go into it, yeah, it may be hot, but I'm gonna get this workout done. We can't control the circumstances swirling around us, but we can choose to be content in every situation. So she's relating, you know, how we can't control the weather as runners, or the condition in which we're running, to life. We can't control what's going on around us in life, but we can choose our attitude and our reaction to it. And the verse that she shared in the beginning was, of course, written by Paul, and she shares how Paul went through all kinds of crazy situations, and he's a good example of how to not let the circumstances affect your joy and your attitude. And, you know, and she shares how he was flogged, beaten with rods, stoned, and thrown into prison multiple times. He was shipwrecked 3 times, spent an entire night and day in the open sea, faced danger from robbers, and frequently experienced thirst, hunger, and sleepless nights. And she says, imagine showing up to a race start line completely dehydrated, famished, and exhausted. That would be terrible. So speaking of Paul, she says he couldn't control the extreme persecution he faced, yet he chose to be content, even in prison, where he penned many of the pages of the New Testament epistles. Even in horrendous circumstances, he accepted where he was. And we ask, you know, how was he able to do that? And he says, you know, at the end of what I read earlier, that he did it through Christ. You know, the verse a lot of us, you know, memorize as kids, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I wrote a note off to the side that aspect is very important. Through our own human willpower, when really bad things happen in life, we can't do that. We need that hope of Christ in us to be able to react to bad circumstances, because as humans, we have crazy emotions. We're not always gonna react rightly or how God would want us to react. Although we long for perfect living conditions, that's not reality. We don't always get to live life in our sweet spot. Just as our physical bodies acclimate to extreme temps, Jesus pours his strength and peace on our weary souls. When we embrace the Holy Spirit, he leads us in every situation, no matter how extreme it feels. As strength ignites within us, it changes our perception of what lies ahead. And then she ends with, no matter what kind of season we're facing, we're resolved to keep running the race. And it's so important to really realize that, I know at least for me, that's where my hope comes from. Yeah, I wear a ring that says hope. And at least, definitely over the past year, with all the crazy that's happened, it's nice to, I have that there as a reminder. Where does my hope come from? And, that's a verse, and I don't know the reference for it, but I lift my eyes into the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And if he is big enough to have created everything, he's got control of any situation that I could possibly find myself in. All right, questions. Identify a time when life's conditions were not so good for you, and how did you get through it? Well, this isn't necessarily me, but it relates to me because it's my husband. My husband is a small business owner, and he tells the story way better than I do, but I will give a synopsis. Maybe, let's see, we'll be married for 10 years this year, so maybe 7 or 8 years ago, the business was going through a big change, and he wasn't sure what was going to happen, whether the business was going to, cease to exist as he knew it, or if he was going to be able to find a way to trudge through this particular changing period. Being a small business owner is not always fun, but he resolved to give it over to God. And there was certain business decisions that he could have made that made things easier, but they weren't the right decisions, if that makes any sense. But he wanted the business to be blessed and to be a blessing to our family. So he resolved to, give it to God and, do what he knew was right. And if the business was going to succeed past that point, it was going to, and if not, we would find another way to support our family. We both went to college for athletic training, so we always have that to fall back on. But he really enjoys being a small business owner. And through the next maybe half a year, I don't know if it's half a year, but post him making that resolve, the business has grown exponentially, and he attributes all that to God and giving the business to him. And today it's an extremely successful thing. He's got several locations in Georgia, and that is I guess a really good example, because it was kind of rocky there for a minute, but he resolved that no matter what, he was going to do what he knew was right and give the business to God, and if it was going to be successful, it was. And like I said, he is much better at that story. So, but that's just a really good example, I feel. Where in your life are you struggling to be content right now? And like Paul, are you willing to surrender, claiming the strength of Jesus? Really, the only thing I can think of that I guess you would call it a struggle to be content is the fact that life, as we know it right now, is not the same as it was. I know I was talking to my stepkids the other night, because I realized that we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary, if you want to call it that, of when our shutting down of everything happened. It was, actually my stepdaughter reminded me, it was Friday, March 13th. We were at a soccer game. And of course there was us and other parents. My stepson was playing soccer. And so, you know, there was a whole bunch of parents there, and we all were like looking at our phones. We got the message that, oh, our school's gonna close for 2 weeks in an overabundance of caution. And we're like, oh, it'll just be 2 weeks. And I think it was 2 weeks, and then they were gonna have a week, and then it was gonna be spring break. And that was just the 2 weeks, and it never opened again. So I think maybe that's what comes to my mind, just is being content with, I'm a very impatient person. I told my sister that if our stuff hadn't come on the same day, I'm not sure I could have waited to open it to when she got hers, because I'm impatient. I can be a very impatient person. And I know that slowly but surely, things will start creeping back to normal. Oh gosh, I hope they do. But being content with, you know, a lot of the things that I was involved with as far as like church, and I did stuff with Fellowship of Christian Athletes at the school, and all these things that I was part of my daily life has yet to come back. And just being content with finding ways that God wants to use me right now where I am, and not just those things that I used to do, if any of that makes sense. But I do really hope that, you know, one day we don't always have to walk around with masks on, and we can see each other's faces and smiles, and it's not weird to see a friend in the grocery store and be like, oh, can I give them a hug, or are we just doing the elbow thing, or, you know. But that's what comes to my mind for that question. All right, she ends with, this is one of my favorite verses, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 10. For the sake of Christ, then I am content with weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. I love that, for when I am weak, then I am strong. It makes me think of two things. I always think of David and Goliath. I think that's such a magnificent story of, doesn't matter how small or weak you think you may be, that God can use you for big things. And if you've never seen the movie Facing the Giants, you should watch it, because it's based on a true story, first of all, which is really fun. But there's a line in there with the son and the dad who is in a wheelchair, and the son is thinking about, or he's trying to be the kicker for the football team. He's usually a soccer player. And he's doing okay, but he's really not, you know, he's just still learning how to translate his soccer skills to being a kicker. And he asks his dad if God wanted to use him for mighty things, why did he make me so small and weak? And the dad says, to show how mighty he is. And I just love that. I'm a smaller person, I'm not the strongest person, you know. I'm just, you know, this little person, you know, going through life, but it doesn't matter. Small, weak, big, tall, whoever you are, God can use you for such mighty things if you let him. So consider that encouragement, that he wants to do that so much. He has such great things that he wants for us in this life. Like I always go back to this verse that Jesus said he came that we may have life and have it abundantly. So I hope everybody is doing well, and if you participated in Virtual Princess, that your stuff comes soon. Oh my gosh, it's so special. So I hope everybody's gonna have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.